Vampire King saw his maid's daughter washing dishes at 3 a.m., then found out why she skipped school. The castle slept under a heavy, velvet darkness, broken only by the pale moonlight that spilled through the tall, arched windows. Storm clouds drifted across the sky, and the distant rumble of thunder rolled through the stone corridors. It was a night like any other in the kingdom ruled by Lucian, the Vampire King, yet tonight would change everything. Lucian moved silently through the halls of his castle, the echo of his boots soft against the cold stone. He was a man feared by all who knew his name, yet his eyes, dark and sharp, held a curiosity few had ever seen. He walked not for duty or ceremony tonight, but because a restlessness tugged at him, a quiet whisper that urged him to wander the empty castle. As he turned a corner, a faint, flickering light caught his attention. It came from the servants' kitchen, a place usually locked at this hour. Curious, he stepped closer, listening. The soft clink of porcelain echoed through the stone halls. Someone was there. Peering through the doorway, Lucian saw Elara, the maid's daughter. She was small and delicate, yet something about her presence commanded quiet strength. Her sleeves were rolled up, her dark hair falling over her shoulders, and her hands moved with care as she washed dishes by the candlelight. The soft water ran over her hands, and the light reflected on her tired eyes. It was 3 in the morning. 3 in the morning, and she was working while the rest of the castle slept. The king's brow furrowed. Most would have cursed their fate, hidden behind excuses or fear. But she was different. She did not complain, she did not waver. Her silent determination struck something in Lucian he had not felt in decades. He stepped back into the shadows, watching her as a storm outside rattled the windows. Lightning flashed, illuminating the kitchen for a moment, casting her in a soft, ethereal glow. The way she bent over the sink, humming a quiet, almost sorrowful tune, made him pause. Who was this girl, working in the dead of night while the world slept? Lucian had ruled for centuries, yet he had rarely seen such quiet strength. Her presence was a candle in the darkness, small yet unwavering. He lingered, drawn by a curiosity he could not name. "Elara," he murmured under his breath, testing the sound of her name. It felt strange on his tongue. The girl did not hear him. She was focused on her task, scrubbing dishes with careful, precise movements. He stepped closer, careful not to reveal himself, and leaned against the stone wall. The air smelled of wet soap and faint herbs. He saw her lips move, whispering something to herself. I wish I could go to school tomorrow, but Mother needs me." The words were soft, almost a prayer. Lucian's eyes narrowed. She had been skipping school to work at night. Why? What burden had she taken upon herself at such a young age? The storm outside seemed to echo her unspoken struggle, thunder rolling like the beat of a heavy heart. Lucian felt a strange pull toward her, something foreign and unsettling. He had ruled with fear for centuries, yet in this quiet kitchen he felt only fascination and perhaps a flicker of something he did not want to admit, concern. The girl moved to a small table to dry the dishes, her hands trembling slightly from fatigue. Lucian watched, noticing every detail, the way her shoulders slumped, the tired line in her eyes and the strength in the set of her jaw. She was small, fragile in appearance, yet she carried a weight no adult should bear. A sudden gust of wind blew through the cracked window, causing the candle to flicker dangerously. Lucian stepped forward, faster than he had intended, extinguishing the draft with a mere gesture. The candle steadied, and Elara glanced up, startled. Her eyes widened and she froze as if sensing him. Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Lucian stepped from the shadows, revealing himself. His presence was commanding, yet not threatening. He did not raise his hand or his voice. He simply stood, observing her with a steady gaze. I am Lucian," he said, his voice calm, deep, and soft like velvet. "I saw you." Elara's breath caught. She had heard tales of the Vampire King, the ruler who was as feared as he was mysterious. None had ever seen him and lived to speak of it. Her heart pounded, yet she did not flee. Something about his presence was not threatening, yet it was powerful, like the pull of a dark, unstoppable river. Why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I could ask you the same," Lucian said, a faint trace of amusement in his voice. "It is not common for servants' children to wander the castle at this hour." Alara's eyes flickered with a mixture of fear and defiance. I was just helping. My mother, she is not well. I could not leave her. And school her voice faltered and she looked down at her hands. Lucian watched her, understanding more than she realized. Her life was not her own, yet she carried it with quiet dignity. He felt an unfamiliar pull toward her, an urge to protect, to intervene, to reach across the centuries that separated them. "Tell me," he said softly, "why do you burden yourself so?" Alara hesitated, then spoke, her voice shaking but steady. "Mother, she owes a debt to the house, a debt that she cannot repay alone. So I do what I can. I skip school, I work at night, I try to help her." Lucian's eyes darkened, not with anger but with something heavier, interest and perhaps a sense of responsibility. The word struck him like a blade. A family bound by a curse, a child sacrificing her childhood. It was not just unfair, it was cruel, and it was in his kingdom. "You should not bear this alone," he said, his voice low. "No child should." Alara looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. She had never seen the king show concern. He was known for his power, his rule, and his distance. Yet here he was, standing before her, speaking words of care. I do not know any other way," she admitted. I cannot let my mother suffer." Lucian studied her for a long moment. He had always believed that fear was necessary to maintain control, but fear alone did not move him now. It was her courage, her selflessness, her quiet endurance that stirred something long buried in him. "You are brave," he said finally, "braver than most who call themselves rulers." Alara blushed at the words, a faint warmth creeping into her cheeks. It was the first time anyone had called her brave without demand or expectation. The storm outside raged harder, and the castle groaned under the wind. Lucian felt a sudden impulse to stay, to protect her from more than just the storm. Yet he knew he could not linger too long. Secrets were dangerous, and the world of vampires was unforgiving. "Rest now," he said, his voice almost a command, though gentle. "Return to your chamber before dawn. I will ensure no one disturbs you." Alara hesitated, fear and gratitude mingling in her chest. "Why, yes, your majesty," she whispered, bowing slightly. Lucian nodded, stepping back into the shadows. He watched her leave, her small figure moving through the corridor with careful steps. And as she disappeared, he felt a pull he had not expected, a desire to know more, to protect, and perhaps to connect. Alone again, the castle seemed emptier than before. The wind rattled the windows, and the candle flickered softly, as if in response to his thoughts. Lucian turned away from the kitchen, his mind restless. A child, brave beyond her years, had entered his world at its darkest hour, and for the first time in centuries, he wondered what it meant to care for someone beyond power, beyond duty, beyond fear. He knew, without fully understanding why, that this encounter would change the course of both their lives. The maid's daughter had stepped into his sight, and now nothing could remain the same. And somewhere in the shadows of the castle, the storm seemed to whisper, as if acknowledging a shift in fate. The next morning, the castle awoke under a pale, gray light. Rain still whispered against the stone walls, and puddles reflected the jagged silhouette of the towers. Inside, servants hurried about, their voices soft but hurried, carrying trays of breakfast and bundles of linens. The world continued as if nothing had changed, but for Alara, the night had left a lingering weight. She had not forgotten the shadowy figure in the kitchen, the presence of the vampire king who had spoken to her with strange kindness. Her heart still skipped when she thought of him, though fear remained. Who could imagine a ruler, feared across the kingdom, walking among the shadows to watch a maid's child. Alara returned to her small room in the servant quarters, drying her hands and trying to think of anything but that midnight encounter. She found a note tucked under her pillow. It was small, sealed with black wax, and smelled faintly of sandalwood. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. "Do not push yourself too far. Rest. There is someone watching, someone who cares." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight she could not explain. She looked around her tiny room, heart pounding. Was it a trick? Or had the Vampire King truly left her a message? She did not know. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of hope flickered. Perhaps the world was not entirely cruel. Meanwhile, Lucian walked through the corridors of his castle, moving with the silence of centuries. His mind lingered on the girl, the way she had worked quietly through the night, her small hands trembling but determined. He had lived for centuries, ruled with power, enforced fear, yet never had he felt such an urge to protect. He had seen children before, but none like her. Her courage was not reckless. It was quiet, deliberate, born of responsibility and love for her mother. And in that, he felt something he had long thought impossible: admiration and perhaps the first threads of longing. The day passed with its usual courtly duties and noble visitors, yet Lucian's thoughts remained divided. Every flicker of candlelight reminded him of her. Every echo in the empty halls pulled him toward the servant quarters. The kingdom was vast, and power was absolute, yet a child washing dishes in the dead of night had unsettled him more than any rival or rebellion. By evening, Lucian found himself standing outside the servant quarters once more, hidden in the shadows. He watched as Alara moved quietly through her chores. She did not notice him at first, focused on folding linens with precise care. Her hair fell across her face, damp from washing earlier, and the light from the lantern glimmered softly against her dark eyes. He stepped closer, unable to resist. "Alara," he said softly, careful not to startle her. She froze, turning her head slowly. Her heart leapt in her chest. Your Majesty," she whispered, bowing slightly. Fear mixed with a strange, unexplainable curiosity. She did not understand why she felt safe in his presence, yet her instincts told her that danger and protection were intertwined in him. "I wanted to know," Lucian began, his voice softer than she had expected. "Why do you bear so much alone?" Alara swallowed hard. "It is my duty. My mother, she owes a debt to the house. I cannot let her suffer, so I work at night, skip school, do what I can." Her words tumbled out, a confession she had never spoken aloud. Lucian listened in silence, the shadows deepening around them. The storm outside had returned, wind rattling the shutters, rain splattering against the stone. The night felt alive, the castle itself holding its breath as their words hung in the air. "You carry a heavy burden for your age," he said finally. "No child should endure such weight alone." Alara lowered her gaze, uncertain. She had never known kindness from the world outside her home. People feared the vampires, respected them, but rarely showed compassion. And yet here was the Vampire King, speaking to her without threat, without command, simply noticing her struggle. I have no choice," she whispered. "If I do not help Mother, I cannot bear what would happen to her." Lucian's eyes softened, though he did not speak immediately. He had seen cruelty, betrayal, and fear in the faces of thousands, yet her words struck deeper than any dagger. A debt, a family bound by circumstances beyond their control. It was familiar in some ancient, unspoken way. He understood what it meant to be trapped, to bear burdens imposed by the past. "You should not carry it alone," he repeated. "There are ways to ease the suffering." Alara's eyes flickered with uncertainty. I do not know any way," she admitted. "The house it is powerful. I am only a child." Lucian studied her, weighing his centuries of knowledge against the simplicity of her courage. She was young, yet she had an inner fire that not even he could ignore. And in that fire he saw a reflection of something long buried within himself, the longing to care, to act not as a ruler but as a man. "Tomorrow," he said, "I will send help, discreetly. Do not worry about the night. Rest will serve you better than toil." Elara blinked, disbelief warring with hope. You would do that?" He inclined his head slightly. "Yes, for now that is enough. You may not understand, but know this, you are not alone." The girl's chest swelled with a strange mixture of fear and gratitude. She had spent her life believing the world to be unkind. That strength meant silence, that courage meant enduring alone. And yet, here was a man of immense power, offering care without demand or judgment. As Lucian turned to leave, he paused. "Be careful," he said softly. "There are those who watch who would exploit weakness. Do not trust all who smile in daylight." Elara nodded, though she barely understood. "I will, Your Majesty." Lucian disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with the faint light of the lantern and the lingering sound of rain. And as she looked down at the folded linens, she realized something she had never known before. For the first time, she felt seen. That night sleep came reluctantly, filled with images of shadowed corridors, flickering candlelight, and the pale, watchful face of the vampire king. She could not explain why, but she felt a connection, a silent thread drawn between them that neither fully understood. Meanwhile, Lucian returned to his private chambers, mind restless. He had lived through centuries, witnessed wars, plotted betrayals, and ruled with unyielding authority. Yet for the first time, a child had unsettled him, not with fear or defiance, but with quiet, unwavering courage. She was a puzzle, a light in the darkness, and he could not ignore her. Over the next few days, he observed her discreetly, ensuring her work did not go unnoticed. He left small comforts, a warm cloak on her chair, herbs to ease her mother's ailments, a book or two for her studies. Elara found these tokens mysteriously placed and wondered in secret who cared enough to leave them. She did not know it was Lucian, nor did she understand the feelings entwined with these gestures: fascination, admiration, and an unspoken, quiet longing. And the secret she carried grew heavier. Each night she still worked in the shadows, washing dishes, cleaning floors, helping her mother in silence. Her life was divided between sunlight and moonlight, between the obligations of a child and the burdens of a household cursed by invisible debts. Lucian's presence became a constant in her life, unseen yet felt. The castle, vast and cold, seemed smaller, almost alive with their connection. Each encounter, each glance, each gesture was charged with subtle tension, though neither understood its full depth. But the world of vampires was never idle, and secrets rarely stayed hidden. One evening, while Elara was tending to the candles in the hall, a shadow moved beyond the outer walls of the castle. Lucian sensed it immediately, a rival, watching, waiting. Someone who would use weakness against them, someone who would see her vulnerability as a weapon. He moved silently through the halls, his senses alert. Elara, unaware, continued her work, her small figure lit by the flickering flames. Lucian watched her, heart tightening with concern. The girl who had captured his attention, who had stirred emotions long thought buried, was unaware of the danger creeping closer. And in that moment, he made a decision. The protection of the girl and her mother would no longer be quiet. The threads of fate had pulled him into her life, and he would not turn away. The kingdom, the court, the traditions, all of it mattered less than the small, fragile life that had captured his attention. The castle was quiet again, but the silence was uneasy. Shadows stretched across the corridors, long and twisting, as if they were alive. Outside, the sky had turned a deep violet, the clouds heavy and threatening. The air smelled of rain and stone, and every corner of the ancient halls seemed to hold a secret. Elara moved carefully through the servant quarters, carrying a small basket of herbs for her mother. Her fingers brushed against the edges of the rough stone walls as she went, and her heart beat faster than usual. Something in the castle had shifted. She could feel it, though she could not name it. The days since the midnight visit had left her both anxious and curious. The small gifts left by the mysterious protector, the cloak, the herbs, the books, had comforted her, yet each one carried an unspoken question: who watched over her? And why? Lucian, meanwhile, paced the corridors of his private chambers. His mind was troubled. The debt her family owed was not simple. It was tied to an old curse, one he had known about for centuries but had never thought would touch someone so fragile, so human. Her mother's family had been bound by a pact long ago with a rival clan of vampires. Failure to honor it would bring ruin, not just to them but to the fragile balance of power between the houses. Lucian understood curses better than anyone. He had seen them break families, destroy kingdoms, and consume souls. Yet this one struck differently. It was personal. Alara's courage, her purity, her quiet strength had moved him. And now, knowing the full weight of what she carried, he could not ignore her plight. That evening, he approached her quietly in the kitchen, where she was preparing supper. The flicker of candlelight made her hair shine like dark silk, and her small hands moved quickly, deftly, though exhaustion pulled at her shoulders. "Alara," he said, his voice soft but firm. She froze, almost dropping the basket. "Your Majesty," she whispered, bowing instinctively, though she had begun to expect his presence. Her curiosity and fear were balanced now by a strange, unspoken trust. "Your burden is heavier than I realized," he said. "Tell me everything. Do not leave anything out." She hesitated, glancing at the door as if the walls themselves might listen. Then, with a quiet sigh, she began. "Mother, she owes a debt, a curse. It has followed our family for generations. If we fail, if we cannot repay it, I do not know what will happen." Lucian listened carefully, his expression unreadable. The candlelight flickered across his sharp features, casting shadows that made him look both distant and strangely human. He understood now that the danger was more than financial. It was magical, ancient, and dangerous. "The curse," he said slowly, "was meant to control, to bind, and now it threatens those who are innocent." "Yes," she whispered. I do what I can, but it is never enough. I work at night, I skip school, Her voice broke and she looked down at her hands, trembling. "I cannot save her alone." Lucian stepped closer, his shadow stretching over her small form. "You are braver than most adults I have known," he said. "Yet courage alone is not enough. You must not face this burden alone." Her eyes widened, a mixture of fear and wonder in them. You would help?" she asked. "I will," he said firmly. "But we must be careful. Those who place the curse will not allow it to be undone easily. They will come. And when they do, you must trust me completely." Alara nodded, though fear tightened her chest. She had always feared the power of the vampires, the sharpness of their teeth, the coldness in their eyes. Yet in Lucian she felt something different, a strength tempered with care, a presence that could shield her if only she allowed it. For the next few nights, Lucian prepared. He studied ancient tomes in the castle library, consulting forbidden texts and notes from centuries past. He traced the origins of the curse and learned that breaking it would require more than power. It required trust, courage, and a willingness to risk everything for someone else. Alara, meanwhile, began to notice the subtle ways the castle seemed safer. A servant's cart was left where it could trip her no more. Candles were placed in hidden corners, making the halls brighter at night. Herbs for her mother appeared in the kitchen. She did not know it was Lucian, yet the feeling of being watched was now protective, not threatening. Their encounters became more frequent. Sometimes it was brief, a glance across the hall, a word of caution, a small gesture. Each time the tension between them grew, though neither could fully understand why. Alara felt drawn to him, despite the fear she had always carried. And Lucian, he felt the stirrings of something long thought impossible, attachment, affection, and a desire to protect, not out of duty, but from his own heart. One night, Lucian found Alara in the library. She had snuck in, hoping to study spells and histories that might give her insight into her mother's curse. Books were stacked around her, pages spread open, her eyes tired but focused. "Ilara," he said softly. She jumped, looking up. I wanted to learn," she said quickly. Perhaps there is a way to help my mother myself." Lucian stepped closer, his eyes scanning the ancient texts. "Knowledge is useful, but power must be guided carefully. You cannot face this alone. Let me teach you what you need to know safely." She nodded, hesitant but eager. It was the first time she allowed herself to hope. For centuries she had been cautious, mistrustful, and careful. And now, for the first time, someone powerful, someone feared, had offered guidance without harm, without threat. Days passed and the bond between them grew. Lucian taught her how to read subtle signs in magic, how to sense disturbances in the energy of the castle, and how to recognize threats before they arrived. Ilara learned quickly, her mind sharp, her determination unwavering. And yet beneath the lessons, a quiet connection developed, a silent understanding of shared responsibility, of unspoken care, and of emotions neither dared to name. But danger was not idle. One evening, as the castle slept, a shadow moved along the outer walls. Lucian sensed it immediately, a rival clan observing, waiting, seeking to exploit weakness. He moved silently, unseen by Ilara, toward the source. The danger was real, and it was closer than he had anticipated. Ilara, unaware of the threat, worked by candlelight, arranging herbs and books. She was tired, but determination kept her awake. She did not notice the figure in the hall, nor the subtle shift in the castle's atmosphere. Lucian appeared beside her, his presence sudden but calm. "They are here," he whispered. "A rival clan watches. They know about the curse. They will come for your family." Fear flared in her chest, but she stood her ground. What will happen?" she asked. "I will protect you," Lucian said, "and together we will face this." "You are not alone, Ilara. Trust me." The words settled over her like a shield. She had spent her life believing in solitude, in the necessity of facing burdens alone. And yet, in that moment, she felt something new, a sense of safety and a tentative hope. The night deepened, and Lucian prepared the rituals that would counter the curse, using ancient words and symbols. Ilara assisted where she could, her small hands steady despite the fear. Together, they worked in silence, the candlelight casting dancing shadows across the walls. Suddenly, a noise echoed in the corridors, a subtle, almost imperceptible rustle. Lucian's senses sharpened immediately. The rival clan had entered the castle, testing their defenses, seeking to strike before the curse could be undone. "Ilara," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "Stay close. Do exactly as I say. No hesitation." She nodded, gripping his hand tightly. For the first time, she allowed herself to rely on someone else, and the sensation was both frightening and comforting. The intruders moved silently, but Lucian anticipated every step. With precision, he directed Ilara, guiding her through hidden passages and concealed rooms. The castle itself seemed to aid them, as if acknowledging his centuries of rule and his intention to protect the innocent. By the time the intruders reached the library, Lucian and Ilara were already in position. Using a combination of light, sound, and ancient wards, he managed to create illusions that misled the rival clan, forcing them to retreat without violence. Ilara exhaled, trembling with relief. We did it," she whispered. Lucian looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Yes," he said softly, "together, courage and carefulness make a strong combination." For the first time, Ilara saw the man behind the title of Vampire King. Not a ruler who demanded obedience, but a protector who understood courage, strength, and sacrifice. And in that moment, their bond deepened, subtle yet undeniable, though neither spoke its name. The castle stood under a silver moon, its towers casting long shadows across the rain-slicked grounds. The storm had passed, leaving the night sharp and still, but the air carried a quiet tension. Lucian paced in his private chambers, hands clasped behind his back, mind alert and restless. Tonight, the curse that had haunted Ilara's family for generations would either be broken or claim more than it already had. For centuries, Lucian had ruled with power, fear, and precision. Yet now, his attention was entirely focused on a single child, a single family, and the invisible thread that had tied him to them since he first saw her washing dishes at 3 in the morning. Ilara, unaware of the preparations happening behind the thick castle walls, moved quietly through the halls. Her basket of herbs was light in her hands, but her heart was heavy with anticipation and fear. She had learned much from Lucian in the past days, to sense disturbances in the castle, to recognize shadows that might hide danger, and, most importantly, to trust when guidance was offered. She paused outside the library, where the ritual was to take place. The air shimmered with quiet magic, a power that pulsed like a heartbeat in the very stones. Lucian had instructed her to stay close, to follow his every word and to keep her mind steady. "Ilara," Lucian said, stepping from the shadows. His voice was calm, commanding, yet soft. "Tonight everything will change. Are you ready?" She nodded, her small hand trembling slightly as she reached for his. I am." He gave her a faint, reassuring smile. "Then trust me completely. Fear will not serve you, but courage, your courage will." Together they entered the library. The room was vast, with shelves reaching to the vaulted ceiling, and the moonlight spilled through the tall windows like liquid silver. Candles lined the tables, casting shadows that danced across the walls, shadows that seemed almost alive. Lucian began the ritual, speaking words older than the castle itself. Symbols glowed faintly on the stone floor as he traced them with practiced hands, and a soft wind stirred within the room. Ilara followed his instructions carefully, her own hands guided by his. They moved in harmony, a silent rhythm born of trust and focus. Hours passed, the candlelight flickering as the night deepened. Ilara's fatigue pressed against her, but she did not waver. The storm outside had returned, thunder rolling in the distance, as if the kingdom itself held its breath. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the halls. Lucian stiffened, his senses immediately alert. The rival vampire clan had returned, seeking to disrupt the ritual to claim the cursed family for their own schemes. Shadows moved outside the library doors and whispers carried like cold wind. "Ilara," he said quietly, his eyes darkening. "Stay behind me, trust completely." Her heart pounded, but she obeyed. In that moment, all her previous fears, her doubts, and her isolation melted into focus. She was not alone. She had never truly been alone. The doors to the library burst open, and figures cloaked in darkness entered. Lucian stepped forward, the air around him pulsing with a quiet, powerful energy. He did not strike immediately. He waited, assessing, calculating. The rival vampires underestimated him. They had not realized that this king had centuries of skill, patience, and foresight. With a swift movement, he created illusions that misled the intruders, sending shadows in multiple directions. The rivals lunged at shapes that were not real, their frustration echoing through the hall. Lucian and Ilara moved through the ritual, their actions precise, their timing perfect. Ilara's hands trembled, but Lucian's presence steadied her. He whispered instructions softly, guiding her through each motion. For the first time in her life, she felt powerful, not because of magic alone, but because of the strength that came from trust, courage, and shared purpose. The rivals, growing impatient, advanced toward them, but Lucian was ready. With a wave of his hand, the protective wards flared, creating a barrier of light and shadow. The intruders recoiled, hissing in frustration. Lucian's control over the castle's energy was absolute, yet it was tempered by care. He did not strike to harm, but to protect. "Ilara," he said, his voice calm amidst the tension. "Focus on the symbols. Let the ritual complete. Nothing else matters." Her eyes met his, and in that gaze she saw centuries of wisdom, power, and something tender, a willingness to sacrifice himself for her safety. It filled her with courage she had never known. She turned back to the symbols, tracing them carefully, following his guidance, her heart steady and strong. Minutes passed like hours. The tension in the room was thick, but slowly, subtly, the symbols on the floor began to glow brighter. The air hummed, and a wind, gentle but powerful, swirled around them. The curse that had plagued her family for generations began to weaken, its grip loosening with each careful step of the ritual. Then, the leader of the rival clan stepped forward, a tall figure cloaked in darkness, his presence chilling. He advanced toward the glowing symbols, ready to strike, to destroy the chance of freedom. Lucian's eyes narrowed. He moved in front of Alara, his body a shield, yet his hand traced a final symbol in the air. Light flared, filling the library with a brilliance that made shadows recoil. The rival leader stopped, caught between the brilliance and the protective energy that now surrounded the room. "You cannot harm them," Lucian said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The curse is ending. Leave now or be banished from this kingdom forever." The rival froze, realizing the extent of the king's power. With a hiss, he signaled his companions, and shadows dissolved as they retreated into the night, defeated but alive. Lucian allowed a brief moment of relief to pass through the room, though his focus remained sharp. Alara, trembling with exhaustion and awe, looked up at him. We did it," she whispered. Lucian's expression softened. "Yes," he said, "the curse is broken. You and your mother are free." Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear but of relief and joy. She had carried this burden alone for so long, and now the weight had lifted. And in that moment she realized something else. She had not been alone. Lucian had been with her, guiding, protecting, trusting her as much as she trusted him. The night air outside was calm now, the storm replaced by a gentle wind that carried the scent of wet stone and distant forests. Lucian guided Alara to the castle courtyard, where moonlight bathed the towers in silver. The kingdom was quiet but alive with the subtle energy of renewal. "You were remarkable tonight," Lucian said, his voice soft. "Not just in courage but in heart. You carry strength few ever learn in a lifetime." Alara smiled, the first genuine smile in what felt like years. I only followed your guidance," she said. I would have been lost without you." He inclined his head slightly, a rare warmth touching his expression. "Perhaps. Yet it is your courage that mattered most. You have grown stronger than you realize." For a long moment they stood in silence, the bond between them unspoken but undeniable. Neither needed to speak of fear, loneliness, or centuries of experience. Their shared struggle, the trust built in shadows and candlelight, and the victory over the curse had forged a connection deeper than words. Lucian turned his gaze to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn began to color the sky. He had ruled with fear for centuries, yet in this single night he had learned something new. Power alone was not enough. Compassion, courage, and trust could change hearts, perhaps even kingdoms. Alara looked at him, sensing the change. The man before her, once distant and intimidating, was now someone she could look upon with admiration, respect, and something more, something unspoken that lingered between them. The morning light crept into the courtyard, casting long shadows that melted with the sun. Alara felt lighter, freer, yet she knew life would still demand responsibility. But she no longer feared it alone. Lucian's presence, his guidance, and the bond they had formed would remain, a silent, protective force. And Lucian, he realized that for the first time in centuries, he had not ruled merely as a king, but as someone who could care deeply, protect fiercely, and see the beauty in courage and innocence. Alara had awakened something long buried in him: hope, attachment, and a desire to guide rather than command. As she prepared to return to her mother's side, she paused, glancing back at him. Their eyes met, and in that silent moment, centuries of distance, fear, and duty fell away. They did not need words. Their bond was clear, stronger than fear, brighter than the darkest nights, and as enduring as the castle itself. Lucian watched her walk away, her small figure moving confidently through the courtyard. For a fleeting moment he allowed himself a rare smile, a warmth that had not touched his heart in ages. The kingdom could wait. The power could wait. For now he had discovered something far more precious: the courage of a child, the bond of trust, and the quiet stirrings of a heart that could feel again. But even in victory, the night whispered of secrets still hidden, shadows still watching, and challenges that would return. The kingdom was alive, and the story of courage, loyalty, and awakening was only beginning. Alara's life had changed forever. She could attend school without fear, help her mother freely. And yet, a quiet magic lingered in the air, a promise that the bond she had forged with the Vampire King would continue, subtle but enduring in the shadows and moonlight of the castle. And Lucian, the once feared king, stood alone atop the highest tower, gazing at the horizon, knowing that redemption was possible, that love could awaken even the coldest of hearts, and that the night, though dark, always held the possibility of light.